You're listening to Scratching and Thriving, a lifestyle podcast hosted by two dope professionals who are passionate about empowering people to thrive. I'm Dr. A.
And I'm Brandon. And we are two longtime friends who met about 20 years ago during undergraduate studies. And we took two different paths in life. I'm a healthcare executive and lifestyle guru.
And I'm an educator and entrepreneur.
And we are here to bring you the content that will help you thrive.
Good day.
How are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I am actually good. I'm good.
That's good. How was your week?
Oh, it went. Typical. It's not. At this point with COVID and just all the changes, it's just like, okay, you just want to survive the day, take a deep breath, and go on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was okay. Nothing extraordinary. So I was going through some emails.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember the episode a couple weeks back that we recorded talking about toxic relationships?
Mm-hmm.
We got quite a bit of feedback on that. And one that hit home was someone asking how to identify toxicity in the workplace. And once identified, how do you deal with it? And I thought that was really, really super interesting because you see it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a different form than a friendship or relationship toxicity would.
Right.
And you have to handle it differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one because a lot of people struggle with it because they feel like they're handcuffed to the job because of the money,
Right.
I see it a lot, and I talk to a lot of employees all the time about their experiences in the workplace. What I will say, I've been in toxic work environments where I have physically gotten ill being there, like driving to work. I could physically feel myself getting a headache or getting nauseous. And then I've been in environments where I truly loved the job. And I think a lot of times, there's all kind of research out there that says people don't leave jobs, they leave managers, they leave leadership.
That's true.
And I think
that is true.
That is a big part of it. Leadership sets the culture, they set the tone for your job, your organization, and what's allowed, what's not. I think that leads to toxicity in the workplace. I also think the lack of having policies and procedures in place, if they're either non-existent
or
structure, poorly implemented. Yep. I think all of that leads to toxicity. And then, of course, you have the coworker relationship, gossiping and people who aren't motivated. You feel like you're working harder than the next and those kinds of things. That leads to toxicity in the workplace.
So now that you've identified what it leads to, what causes the toxicity, how do you identify it? Because I'm going to tell you, I see it sometimes. I saw it more way back in previous positions and organizations than I do now, because I think that we have gotten better as leaders to identify it and eliminate it with a lot of leadership training and organizational effectiveness and a lot of more tools at our fingertips to help guide our associates and employees and to help hold them accountable in a more nurturing way. But what I have seen in the past is I've seen that passive exclusion bullying. Like, the answer to something, but I'm not going to share it because I don't want you to know and be successful. So you see a lot of different forms of bullying, which is a big deal because that can cause a lot of issues. And it's not as overtly as I'm going to beat you up when I get off the clock. A lot of times it's I'm not going to help you when I see you struggling.
Right.
And that doesn't build teamwork or the culture at all. It does nothing for the culture.
Yeah, I think the lack of support, lack of mentorship, poor communication Oftentimes, employees will find out things are changing or after they've been implemented, after it's done, the decision has been made. So people feel excluded in that process. And then sometimes, if you're onboarding a new person or you're new to a position, and like you said, someone else knows how to do the job, but they don't share that now you have to figure it out. I had to learn it, you got to learn it on your own, kind of a
Right.
thing. One thing that you said that I think is interesting is the leadership thing. A lot of times leaders, people in positions to make decisions, supervisors, they don't recognize because they are often in the middle.
Right.
Right. So they know what the executive leadership is saying. They know what the board is saying. They know what the shareholders are saying they need. So they feel the pressures from the top, and they're instructed to implement. You need to get this done. You need to get your people to move. You need to get your people to act. And so the people that you are supervising or leading in that area, they don't understand all the time the decisions. And you may not feel like you can disclose that information. You may not feel like you can explain why something is the way it is. And people feel like then they are forced to do things. They don't understand the rationale behind a decision. And so they feel like it's toxic because they are the ones doing the work. You've made a change that negatively impacts them, and they don't understand the rationale for it. And you're not even taking feedback.
Well, and what I teach my leaders is you lead with the why.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in my field, we strive to be a high reliability organization. Mm-hmm. So with that comes transparency. But there is a way to be transparent without exposing negativity.
Absolutely.
So safety is huge, right? In any organization, any field, safety is a big thing. So whenever we change a process in one of my areas, number one, I want to involve and engage the staff. Because I can sit in my office all day long and tell you need to fix this, but I don't necessarily always know how to fix it because it's been 10 plus years since I've been in that position where I was the staff person, right? So you have to always get them engaged and lead with the why, because if you tell them why we need to fix it and tell them, I'm not going to tell you how to fix it because I can't. That wouldn't be reasonable. But I can tell you what resources that you have to fix it. It has to be fixed within the policy set by corporate. And you tell me with these two things how you can fix it. How can I support you in fixing it? That way they buy into it. If they know the why and that they had some part
contribution,
some part of process fixing, then they'll take it and run with it. And that's what we call in my area of expertise, unit-based councils. Those are the people who are on the unit. They have been chosen by their peers to represent the unit, and they are to bring issues forward and back down so that we can work between leadership and the staff can work together to get it fixed.
Absolutely. So it's collaborative leadership.
It has to be.
Top-down leadership does not work. It's antiquated. It's not transparent. It will not work. Oftentimes, leaders have a bird's eye view, and the people on the ground actually doing the work, they know the day-to-day ins and out. They need support, and you need to hear from them, to your point. And I think that that's an important piece. If you are in a leadership position, you are a supervisor, that is something that you should immediately start to pivot toward, is how do I involve my staff, my folks, in the decision-making process about changes, ways we can improve the culture, ways we can improve processes.
Right. And that helps eliminate toxicity. Because the more you eliminate toxicity in the workplace, the more likely people are going to stay. So that reduces your turnover, and that's going to help your pocket and your budget in the end. And the more likely people are going to come to work for you. And that again helps with proper hiring processes, because If I have a whole slew of people to choose from, that means I can, number one, probably take my time and choose the right person for the right role. And number
Mm-hmm.
two, I have a big pool of candidates, and the likelihood of me finding someone that's a good fit is higher than if I had two candidates for one position and I had 10 candidates for one position. You can't tell me out there 10 I can't find a really good fit. The workplace environment and the lack of toxicity is going to be known not just inside the four walls, but people are going to talk.
Oh,
They're
absolutely.
going to talk about your environment, your culture. And the more they
Mm-hmm.
talk, the positive things, the less it's easier on the leader, really. It makes the
Right.
leader's life a lot easier because number one, you got the people on your unit controlling the environment. They know the
Mm-hmm.
goals, they know the mission. And if they know all of that and you all work together on it and you provide the resources as the leader, you can't help but be successful.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really important point because reputation matters in leadership. And I think when your staff and people in the organization are talking about their experiences in a negative way, in this day and age with Google and internet searches and everything, you better believe people are looking up. Who are the leaders there? Who are the people? Who could they be referring to? People do Google searches because they want to know.
Right.
So it's not just talk. It's not just gossip. It actually can have, especially in industries that are smaller, like the networks are smaller. In the industry that I work in, you are going to cross paths with people from other organizations, similar organizations at some point in your career often.
Right.
Like it will happen at conferences, it will happen just sharing information. You might actually call them up and say, "Hey, I have a question. How do you all handle this?" That is very common in my industry. And so our paths will always cross. We all talk. Everybody knows what's happening at institution X and institution Y. You have to be very careful about how you're interacting with your employees. Some people are just going to have a negative experience, and that's okay. I mean, that's life. You can't control everything. But when it is consistent and pervasive, that's the feeling in your organization, you have to fix that. You have to fix that problem. Turnover will be high.
Mm-hmm.
People, you won't be able to fill positions. People will be unhappy. They will withdraw. They won't take as much initiative, all kind of things.
So we talked about what leaders need to do to fix toxicity. What
Mm-hmm.
do you think that the actual employee can do with with as far as the culture of their environment and working through or eliminating toxicity? What's the employee's role?
I think it starts with one of the things that we talked about when we talked about personal relationships, which is kind of that self reflection and actually looking at the situation, looking at yourself. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? How much of that is the workplace? How much of that is you? And how much of that is your personal situation kind of being brought into the workplace?
Right.
And then once you do that, you can better identify how to address the issue. So, for example, if you have a lot of stressors at home and you're showing up at work stressed, it's going to be easy to trigger you because, somebody's saying the wrong thing or you having to do somebody else's job plus your job. All of those things are going to be seen negatively. If you don't like your job, like you just truly, I hate this job. I've been doing it for 30 years. I've watched everybody around me get promoted, but you haven't applied for a promotion. You haven't talked about a promotion. You have to look at that to say, what can I do differently? And I actually know quite a few people that will sit in a position and get burnt out from a job,
Oh,
doing
yeah.
the same job, putting in long hours, giving their best, just waiting for their supervisor to say, "I'm going to promote you."
Well, and that's misery too, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna tell you, misery loves company. So
Mm-hmm.
if I am miserable at home and every time I leave work, I am miserable, I highly doubt you're going to be able to walk through the door of work, the threshold, and suddenly you're no longer miserable.
Mm-hmm.
It bleeds over into your workplace. So
Absolutely.
I would also say when you're doing self reflection, do a hyper focus on your home life, because
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that if your home life is not balanced, your work life is not will not be balanced, and it's vice
Mm-hmm.
versa. So you have to have a balance on both for either one to be okay. Because
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you, I've had employees come to me with some issues, and some of them I'm thinking, how are you functioning day to day? And a lot
Right.
of them you don't even know because they're suffering in silence. And but then sometimes something will happen and they'll explode. You be like, okay, this is absolutely not who you are. Tell
Mm-hmm.
me what's going on. And then I get the waterworks and I get
Oh,
right all of that. I said,
yep.
okay. So then we start to
Yep.
look at stuff like employee assistance programs and counseling,
Yes.
things like that. And because
And
every company at this point has it.
and when you do get to that point, you do need to reach out to HR. When you are physically getting sick, you are emotional, you're feeling depressed, demotivated, all of that, you need to reach out to HR because there are benefits. There are EAPs, like you mentioned, that exist. There are leave plans that your
Right.
organization has that you may need to take advantage of. If you are having to be a caretaker, especially during this time, the government has, through the FFRCA program, ways that you can take leave to attend to your children for school and things like that. You just have to talk to your job about what those options and benefits are and how you leverage that if it is at that point. And that is a heightened point. That's the point where you probably are seeing, you're talking to your doctor about, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm
Right. Right.
experiencing.
And don't, and a lot of people, when they go through rough patches in life, they tend to shy away from the therapies that are recommended by their
Mm-hmm.
physician. You know, a lot of people don't want to go to counseling because I don't want to talk to anybody. A lot of people don't want to get on those SSRIs medications to level out their mood to help them with depression, anxiety. What I would say, talk to your doctor, use your benefits provided, talk to your doctor. And if they recommend whatever they recommend, I would say listen to them. Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these things that people are going through, especially these days, are not easy to work through alone.
Right.
So don't live in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Go talk to someone. If they want to give you a temporary dose of medication to get you over the hump, consider it. Think
Mm-hmm.
about it, because if your home life is not balanced, you will bring toxicity to work and it's going to cause backlash. And what you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do is, because you're not managing your home life well, cause toxicity at work, and then your job ends up in jeopardy. Then that
Mm-hmm.
really is going to put a hindrance on your home life because there's no way to pay bills.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to work through the day to day operations that you need to, because you don't have the financial support you need. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to really closely monitor this and know when to wave your white flag, and don't be ashamed to do it.
Right. Here's some other things too. One, if the workplace is toxic because your coworkers are not motivated, they're not interested in the work anymore, they're not taking initiative, they're gossiping, don't engage in that.
Right.
Have a conversation with your leadership and say, here's what I'm noticing, here's what I'm experiencing. I don't want to be a part of that. What do you recommend? What do you suggest? What support can you give me?
Right.
Challenge them. There's a concept called managing up. I would encourage people to look at ways that they can manage up. How do you manage? Part of that is communicating to your supervisor what you need to be successful, right? Here's what I need from you. Can you provide that? If not, what can you provide?
Right. And get involved,
Mm-hmm.
because your unit based council is what we call it. And every field has a employee based, some employee council that makes decisions on the unit or the department.
Mm-hmm.
Every organization or every field has it. Get involved. So if
Mm-hmm.
you feel like changes need to be made, talk to your leadership. Tell them, okay, these are the things I see. And don't just bring a problem, bring a solution. Because
Mm-hmm.
I have mad respect for those that say, okay, this is the problem we identified out here. This is what we feel like would fix it. Can you help us fix it?
And
Absolutely.
document it. That's another thing, because a lot of times people will have conversations and your supervisor could forget. They could forget what your
Correct.
suggestion was. And so make sure, you give the suggestion, you say, here's what I think we can do to improve process X, and then follow up with an email and say, I really appreciate you listening to me earlier today. I just wanted to follow up and say, here's my idea for improving X, Y, and Z. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to support moving forward with this.
And I'm going to tell you, as a leader, I would be like, that is someone worth putting time and effort into growing.
Yep.
That is someone who I feel like is engaged, who wants to
Mm-hmm.
see the unit be successful. And I'm all about employees who want to grow and get to where I am or higher, and
Mm-hmm.
work on the unit and to make the environment non-toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
You
people
know,
were engaged, you have a lot less toxicity.
absolutely, absolutely. And my pop used to tell me closed mouths don't get fed.
Correct.
If there is an opportunity that you want to engage in or idea that you have to express it. Like I said before, I see people sit in positions hoping that someone will see them and promote them. Nobody even knows you're interested
Right.
sometimes. So you have to express what your desires are, what you like to do. And if you realize that the workplace cannot provide that for you, then you need to, again, through that self reflection, make a decision when it's time to move on, how I will go about doing it so it doesn't negatively impact me. And then you have to take the risk of doing so.
Right. And communication is a two-way street. So a lot of
Absolutely.
people sit back and I want my leader to communicate with me. Well, you also need to communicate with your leader, because your
Absolutely.
leader does not have telepathy. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know, how you feel. And with this generation of millennials, it's all about how feelings. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to deal with feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to deal with feelings, you have to communicate it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I, for one, lots of people report to me, lots of people. So if you need to bring me an issue and you need to tell me something,
Mm-hmm.
don't send it through telepathy.
Right.
It's gonna get lost.
It will.
It
It
probably
might
won't
hit
ever
that
make.
leader over there,
Right, because
not me.
it may not make it. So make sure
Right.
you sit down and say, hey, Brandon, I have this idea. I see this issue out on a unit. I have this idea. Let's see. Do you think we can work on it? Absolutely. What do you
Mm-hmm.
need from me to make that happen?
Mm-hmm.
That will be the conversation. I'm going to tell you, I'm not an extraordinarily great leader, because most leaders will think the same way, because in the
Mm-hmm.
end, it's going to be less work. The
Mm-hmm.
less toxic your units are, the less work you have on your plate. And it just
Yep.
makes things easier for the leader. So that's why they put a lot of time and energy into working out toxic people. Because you
Mm-hmm.
have to sometimes make a cultural change, you have to move the cheese. You got to move people, because some people sit too long. And the longer you sit, the more toxic you become, because you don't
Mm-hmm.
feel valued. You get bored. What is that old adage? Idle mind is a devil's workshop. And
Absolutely.
they get into foolishness, and you be like, why are you doing, you've been here too long and you know better. Well, you are not engaged enough.
And that's why, and I'll say this as my last point. That's why it's so important not to be complacent in the workplace. Because when you get complacent in your position in the workplace, you stop developing yourself. You stop engaging in the industry and in your field, and you don't keep that resume fresh and
Right.
ready to go.
Exactly.
So you cannot get complacent in your current position, in your current role, or even your current industry. You've got to think outside of the box. And, I'm a person that believes I refresh my resume about every 6 months.
Correct.
Just to make sure that everything is there. I have a comprehensive resume where it's just like a document of publications, presentations, conferences, board positions, all kinds of things that I've worked on, so that when I need to pull from it, I can. And see, in my industry, we have CVs and resumes.
Right.
And honey, those CVs can be 20, 30 pages.
Easy.
I'm like, you wrote a dissertation.
Easily.
For your resume.
Because I can tell you my resume alone is almost 3 pages.
And so you have to keep a list and understand all the things that you've been engaged in and that you're doing. But if you look at your resume and the last thing you did was 2 or 3 years ago, and that was presented at a conference, or it was you got a certificate in X, Y, and Z, something's wrong. You need to stay fresh. You need to keep your skills up to date, and you need to stay engaged in the network that's important to your industry and your job in order for you to not be complacent and be ready to go if you need to leave.
Because what you don't want to be is to be deemed that toxic person and not even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Adrian, I think, you know what? I think that we did preach a word to the folks today.
All right.
Good conversation.
Mm-hmm. And we want to hear how you're thriving.
Right.
So let us know. Let us know. What's your definition for success? What does it take for you to thrive? What has been your experience? We want to hear that from you. So share it with us so that we can learn from your experiences, and other people, some of our other listeners and thrivers, can learn as well.
Right. And look us up on Instagram, Facebook, and send us emails, because we do want to hear your success stories. And, we also want to hear those things that you may be struggling with, because, we may be young, but we've been through a whole lot of trials and tribulations that we can tell you how to overcome some of these humps. I'm just telling you.